hearing what you guys learn. I'd like to introduce you to the person who was sitting in the back asking about questions about data from education. Shocker.
Outdid myself.
She's the interim CTO of Wake County Schools. Everybody, please give a warm welcome to Marlo Gaddis.
Hi, all. I'm a little like a fish out of water, and if I trip over that cord, please don't laugh. Just take a picture, because my team will love you for that. So today I want to talk to you about some of the challenges of educating our students as we're trying to make them digital. So thus my question to Jason and the panel about what are you doing with education, and Carter and I have already worked together on a few things, so that we're really excited. So in Wake County, I just want to give you a little bit of data. We have 162,000 students. That makes up roughly 10% of the students in the state, just in Wake County. We have 12,000 teachers, but 19,000 employees. So when you think about the size of our district, we're not just a little thing. And we have 12 different instructional calendars. That may mean absolutely nothing to you, but what I can tell you is that that means there are only 2 days every school year, other than holidays, where we don't have kids in session. So we don't get summers off in many of our schools. We're also the largest district in North Carolina, and we're the 15th largest in the US. So when you think about that, we who live in North Carolina don't think much about Raleigh, but we nationally are looked at for a lot of leadership and a lot of the work that we do. We actually have 12 municipalities within our district, which is unusual for any district. So as part of our strategic plan, we have a set of core beliefs. And I've just put a couple of those up here. And that is one, that we believe every student is uniquely capable and deserves to be challenged. We also believe, from this specific next core belief, is that we believe in a culture of innovation. So I've worked for 4 different districts in the state of North Carolina. I am proud to say that Wake County, by far, does more for kids every day than a lot of the other districts. And I live in a different district than I work, so that's a lot for me to say when I have a student in another district. But in my role, our question is how do I live these core beliefs? How does our team, how do our teachers, how do our schools leverage technology to make sure that we are making sure every student is uniquely capable, that we're making sure we have a culture of innovation in that work? So I'm going to talk about 4 quick challenges. I have a hard time saying my name in 15 minutes, so this is going to be really hard for me to go quick, but I'm going to. So the 4 challenges I'm going to talk to you a little bit about today are professional learning or training, the evaluation of EdTech solutions, where there's a lot of information around that right now, data privacy and cybersecurity, and then, of course, digital equity. So 4 major issues, and I will kind of go through those quickly. So let's start with professional learning. So the key is we put technology in schools, but technology itself is not innovative. So how do we begin to leverage what we're putting in schools to make sure it's changing learning and moving our kids forward so that they are more uniquely capable when they graduate? So the challenge. You may or may not know this, but education, we like our initiatives. So there's always a new initiative. And so there's always a competing priority for time. So as we're looking at training teachers and working with administrators and talking with parents, there are always multiple things we've got to talk to them about. The other problem is that technology is still seen as something extra. It's something that's nice to have, but it's not necessarily embedded in our culture. So when we talk, sometimes it's one more thing on the plate that we put for teachers when it really should be part of the ingredients of what's on the plate. The next one is that educators, and I would say not just educators, but leaders and sometimes even our parents, are uncomfortable with a productive struggle. If you're here in this room, it's because you in some way, shape, or form like data and like technology. I'm making that assumption. But you know, especially if you're here and you're looking at hacking, that productive struggle is part of the reason we love what we do, is understanding that. But not everybody is comfortable with a productive struggle. And then the other piece to this is there's not a clear outcome from using technology in education, because technology is a tool. So it doesn't, putting a laptop in every child's hand does not mean that they're going to increase their student achievement unless we look at the human factor, which we know by research is teachers. A teacher is the #1 predictor for how students will succeed in schools. So I'm going to go on to the second challenge, which is the evaluation of EdTech products. This market is booming. How many of you have students or have kids in the room? Few? All right. How many of you have kids who are gamers? All right. Or have kids who just like any type of computer game or any program? All right. So when we look at this, what we have to do is, because the influx, I mean, new products are being put out, like, I feel like every minute. And so when we're doing this, we have to choose based on what works best for the student and the school versus what's nice and flashy and new. So one of the problems we've struggled with is we move from software to digital resources. That sounds silly, but everything used to be installed, and so we used to be able to control what came into our building because we had to install it. But now everything's web-based and cloud-based, and so in doing so, we've opened up a whole gamut, and it just seems that if it's on the internet, we must be able to use it. Second of all, our teachers aren't trained in how to vet resources properly. And I say C Challenge 1 because professional learning, remember the competing priorities, and more time. So getting our teachers to understand how you vet things before you use them with students is a bit of a challenge. We do chase shiny. So innovation is this great word that we like to use in education. I'm sure you use it yourself. I don't think everybody understands what innovation actually means, which is finding better solutions based on new requirements. But if it's new, it's flashy, it's great, that's where we go. It tends to be the way we move. I already mentioned that the number of resources are growing exponentially. And then, of course, what is purchased quite often is never used. So we have a wonderful partner here in Raleigh called Learn platform. And one of the things, we're actually doing some EdTech evaluation. And when you look at this, and this is based on their survey, their national survey, 35% of our licenses that we purchase are never, ever opened, used. 24% are activated but meet 0 goals. 32 meet either a quarter or half of our goals. And then, of course, 9% are the only full users. So when you think about that, and I know many of you are like, oh, they're so wasteful in their spending. That's not true. We're not. But what I will tell you is some of that is based on the fact that a lot of times we buy for the majority, but our students have different needs, and every student is different. And so how we purchase things has got to be looked at a little bit differently in the future. All right, this one may be near and dear to your heart, but data privacy and cybersecurity. As we have been talking about this in a large group with our administrators, this is becoming an ongoing problem and a growing problem across the nation. And so what we have to do is everything we do with technology, rather than chasing that shiny, is we have to figure out what it does that affects the safety and security of our kids and our teachers and our networks and all the data that we own. As Jason put it out, we don't like to share our data quite often, and I appreciate that because I know a few people that are like that. So why is that a challenge? Because our kids and our staff are making online decisions around their privacy every single day. So I want you to think about that. How many of us click through the terms of use when we are installing something or when something updates? We just click through it, we don't read it. Our kids and our staff are just the same way. They don't know what they are necessarily clicking, and it's something to train. I know more IT professionals who don't read the jargon as well. So that's not a criticism on our teachers or our students. We all do it for ease of time. Terms of use and privacy policies are becoming more and more difficult to read. They're very legalese in many cases, and you have to understand where to look for the information. So we are guided by FERPA and COPA, and neither one of those are easy to find in a terms of use or a privacy policy within any online resource we have. We have this balance between ease of use and time. I'm a former kindergarten and first grade teacher. That's where I started. And so when you teach kindergartners, you have to learn how to use your time well because they can get away with you. It is like herding cats if you've never tried it. I recommend everybody go spend a day in a kindergarten class. In fact, if you need one to go to, call me and I'll get you in there. But the idea of making sure we're being secure, but we're not stopping our students from doing what they need to do and not stopping teaching while we're trying to be secure in that process. And then we're not always very discerning about the content that's coming to us. As I mentioned, Stuff is coming through all the time. Finally, there's digital equity. And this is the one that's near and dear to my heart. And if I could ever come up with a group that could try to figure this out for me, I'm challenging you to do this with us. So we have to provide our students with access. And I'm going to talk to you about what I define access is. Most of you are thinking devices and internet, and that's a big part of that, because not everybody has access at home. And the more we go to digital, the more and more it's required and needed to have our kids have access from where they live. But as we know, that's not always a thing we can do. But also, it's not just the stuff, but it's also making sure that our teachers are understanding how to use technology, because we don't want you as a teacher to be gung-ho and use all the technology in the world with your kids, and I'm growing my kids and really getting them to understand how to use all the tools, the data literacy we were talking about before, cybersecurity. His class has got it all. But my class, when I don't like technology and I'm not comfortable with it, my kids are not getting any technology all year long. And we create these gaps of knowledge in our kids when something like that happens. And then the last is students who use tech passively versus active. So a lot of times we get conversations with parents around screen time, and we shouldn't be using our devices with kids because they shouldn't be on there with screen time. Screen time has been changed in definition quite a bit. It's no longer passive. It's not putting my kids on a computer or an iPad watching videos or playing games. It's really about the creation, knowing how to connect with experts out in the field, knowing how to communicate my information digitally, knowing how to promote things, knowing how to collaborate with others over space and time. That's really the work that we're trying to do in schools. And so we've got to do more of that so that it's not a passive, it's a more of an active use. I would be lying to tell you that there's only 4 challenges, so I threw a few more up there for you just in case. So under data, we're in the process of really working with our business intelligence and trying to figure that out from an internal perspective. Personalized learning is on the forefront for us. So when we're starting to look at every child's needs, there's data that has to come around that with learning profiles, and we're working through that. And I'm keeping my very close eye on artificial intelligence because there's some great benefits, but there's also some ethical dilemmas for us internally when it comes to artificial intelligence. Systems, we are going through the state business modernization, so we're looking at changing our entire finance and HR system. We are moving more to the cloud. And then Internet of Things is, with our facilities and with some of our teaching practices, is starting to get on the forefront, and looking at how we manage the data within those 3 things is going to be really important. And then the last thing I will say to you is our organizational structure. So for a department in the 15th largest district in the state, we're drastically underfunded for staffing. So just to give you a little bit, and there's a link here to the state policymakers database, the state requirement for the state average for technicians to device are 1,956, I believe, is the actual number, and across the state from all 115 agencies. 1 technician per 1,956. In Wake County, prior to our we just bought 20,000 Chromebooks and put them in schools. Prior to that, we are at a 1 to 5,124 devices per technician. So what I will tell you is that sounds scary, but I have the best techs in the whole world, and we do, and nobody ever goes without. That's probably to our detriment, because we still believe in doing what needs we have for kids. So those are just a few of the challenges that we have. And remember, our whole core belief is trying to figure out how do we leverage that tech to make sure that every student is uniquely capable, and that innovation and continuous improvement are something that happens in our schools. So any questions? You can find me at MRH Gaddis on Twitter, and then my email address is there as well. So if you have any interest, I'd love to have a conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.